That's the Suffolk Lowland Search and Rescue, combining their Platinum Jubilee event with the opportunity to talk about the very real issue of mental health and how it affects every single one of us. Their chairman, Andy King, joins me on the line now. Hi, Andy.
Morning, Wayne.
Thanks for coming on. The event you're organising is on June the 25th. Can you tell us about it?
I can indeed. It's so we as a team, we obviously wanted to mark the Jubilee, hopefully raise some a little bit of funds, but also raise awareness of mental health. So what we came up with was we decided in the best SULSAR fashion that we would carry, or in this case push, a stretcher from Lowestoft. So we're starting at Nest Point on Saturday the 25th, and we're going to push it to the seafront at Felixstowe. which is about 60 miles.
So, stretcher. Is this one of these kind of hospital stretchers on wheels that we see?
No. This is a stretcher that was developed by Mountain Rescue. So it's a wire cage stretcher with handles on each end, a little bit like a wheelbarrow, but it's got a wheel in the middle of it. We use it when we find somebody who may be in the forest and an ambulance can't get close, so we would then put them on our stretcher. And if you're carrying somebody on a stretcher, you'll know that you can't carry them very far. Whereas with this, it just takes the weight out of it, and it's just a question of balancing it, really.
Okay, and it's 60 miles.
Difficult, still not easy.
I can imagine. 60 miles from Lowestoft to Felixstowe. How many people are taking part in this, Andy?
We're gonna split it into three sections. So and the team there'll be about 10 people in each section, plus support. So we'll have we need fend off on the roads where we're on roads. So we've got our 4x4 team is coming out with us to do fend off. There'll be various support teams at locations along the route. We've got to take into account that the rest of the team have got to remain operational. So it can't involve everybody, although everybody'd probably like to be involved. It can't work like that because we are still operational over that weekend, and if we have to go and we're called out, then we'll have to go. So it's been an interesting logistics project as well.
We'll give that event a plug in just a moment. What I really want to talk about now is the work you do and how that relates to mental health. When we think of Suffolk Lowland Search and Rescue, you think of people off walking or hiking and wandering about and getting lost or falling down a pothole and breaking the leg. You get called out to so much more than that, don't you?
We do indeed, yeah. The category that you've just explained or just described is probably our lowest category that we attend. We will attend. So Suffolk Police will call us. We're activated primarily by Suffolk Constabulary, and the key word is vulnerable. So if somebody is deemed as being vulnerable, so a missing child, somebody with some form of dementia or a potential suicide, then Suffolk Constabulary will call us. We wouldn't very often get called for a missing walker, or we have done in the past, but that's when they've sort of been deemed as being vulnerable, or there's some element of vulnerability.
So mental health accounts for possibly 90% of the work that your charity does.
Huge, yeah, massive.
And you are there, and in some instances, you will save people from taking their own lives.
We have indeed, yeah. If we get called, providing we get called quick enough, then we have. Only a few weeks ago, I took a rope from around a guy's neck. Fortunately, he'd attempted to hang himself in the morning, failed, and by the time we found him, he still had the rope around his neck, and I talked to him for 45 minutes and persuaded him to take the rope from around his neck.
How old was this guy?
Probably mid-40s. Wayne, last year we saw a dramatic increase in cases in call-outs. So prior to last year, 44 call-outs was our highest.
Okay.
Last year was 65. That's an absolute huge jump, and most of those, not all of them, but most of those were probably something to do with some form of mental health, and we saw the age go down as well. So
more and more young people.
Yeah.
And let's be completely frank here. You mentioned about the gentleman with the rope round his neck. If you go wandering off, if you're not suffering with dementia and you go wandering off to these remote areas, the chances are you're not going to be found. You've only got one thing in mind there, haven't you?
Dementia is slightly different in the fact that most people with Alzheimer's or different forms of dementia don't probably go out to kill themselves.
No, they're just lost and confused.
And they forget to go home. And
but dementia to one side. If you take yourself off to one of these remote areas, what is going through your mind?
That I can't tell you. I can't. I as much as I've tried it, it's just you have to be in a very, very dark place to do some of the things that the people have done to themselves that we found.
Can you give us just a couple more examples without being too graphic?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, well, it wasn't a couple of years ago. It was the beginning of last year. We were called out for a gentleman who was missing. We found him 5 days later, and he was laying under a tree, a fallen tree. When we found him, we thought he was dead. I called his name, and to my surprise, he jumped. He'd been laying there for 5 days, and his intention was to lay there until he died. He had no water. He had no food with him. There was no rubbish there. All he was he was just laying there by himself, and he'd laid there for 5 days, and he would have died that night had we not found him.
Andy, for you and your team, and you're all volunteers, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
You're all volunteers. You don't know what you're going to be turning up to when you're called out. You mentioned that gentleman who thankfully wasn't dead, but there must be times where you do find a deceased person, and that must affect your volunteers. It must affect their mental health.
Yeah, it does. Everyone has an effect. You can't not. It's. I mean, I can only speak from my personal experience, but yeah, everyone I've found, I remember. Fortunately, I don't. I deal with it myself. I justify it to myself that okay, we may not have got there quick enough, but in most cases, the ones that we probably find who are deceased they've probably already done it before we've been called. So there was absolutely no way we could have helped them in any way, shape or form. But how I justify it to myself is that we've returned them to their family, and we've given the family quick closure, or given the family closure.
They know what's happened. They're not lingering and suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no. It's and some of them are quite. Yeah, it's some of them are quite horrendous, to be honest.
You said you're getting called to more and more cases involving younger people. It must be really tough for the team when you get the call that a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old or even younger person has gone missing.
It tends to be all hands on deck, really. It's not that you just get out as quick as you can, and we search for as long as we can that's sensible, if that makes sense. You get to a stage in every search, to be honest with you, that becomes the rest of the world. So we work on data sets from historic searches. Some of the books and some of the data sets that we've got are data from 35,000 searchers worldwide. So it doesn't tell you where they're going to be. It tells you what they might do and what the majority of people do.
Andy, you've completely blown me away with what you've had to say today. The work that you do at Suffolk Lowland Search and Rescue is so important, so vital. You're all volunteers. You're like the fourth emergency service, I suppose, in many ways. Let's get you as much money as we can. You're doing this charity fundraiser to keep
We are.
Suffolk Lowland Search and Rescue going. 25th of June, 60 miles, pushing a stretcher, load stuff to Felixstowe. How can people get some money in your coffers?
Right, so go to our website, which is www.sulsar, that's SULSAR.org.uk, and there's a donate button on there. Please donate. We live on, if we don't have funding, then we can't do what we do. And money does make it easier. It buys us kit, and it, because all of our kit, the personal kit that the teams use is funded, but things like thermal imagers, £1,000 a time. It's just we need funds to survive and to be able to function. So companies, please, any companies who want to get involved or would like to get involved or would like to make a donation, then please. I can be reached at chair@sulsar.org.uk. Please send me an email. Anybody who wants to sort of become a sponsor, we'll be happy to have you.
Listen, thank you, Andy. I feel quite humble chatting to you today. Keep up that good work.